I was spending the week in Washington at a cabin in the Cascades. It was far from any major city, nestled deep in the forest at the end of a long dirt road. Winter had just begun, and while there was some snow on the ground, it wasn't too heavy yet. The first 3 days were peaceful, quiet, relaxing, exactly what I had hoped for. But midway through the 4th day, there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. The cabin was isolated, and there was no way to see the porch from inside. I hesitated for a moment before walking over and opening the door. A man stood there, bundled up in a thick winter jacket and a black wool hat. His face was pale, his cheeks red from the cold, and snow clung to his clothes. He had clearly been outside for a while. "How can I help you?" I asked. He gave a friendly smile. "Hey, I'm a bit lost. Can you tell me how to get back to town?" His presence was odd. Town was at least an hour's drive away. Walking there in this weather seemed impossible. And how had he even gotten out here in the first place? Sure," I said. "Take a left at the end of this road and follow it straight to the main highway. That'll take you back to town." He nodded, still smiling, but just stood there for a few seconds without saying anything. The silence stretched too long, and I felt uneasy. Finally, I said, "All right, take care," and started closing the door. He turned and walked off the porch, his boots crunching in the snow. The encounter was strange, but I shrugged it off and went back to what I was doing. Hours passed, and the light snowfall from earlier had picked up, making me anxious about how my car would handle the dirt roads. Wanting to keep an eye on the weather, I went to the back door and pulled back the curtain. My stomach dropped. Footprints in the snow. They circled around the back of the cabin. I was so far out in the woods that anyone being here at all was unsettling. But this? Had the man wandered around my cabin before knocking? Was he checking if someone was inside? The thought made my skin crawl. It was hard to tell how fresh the prints were. Maybe they had been there for hours, or maybe just minutes. The sun had set by now, and the wind was picking up. I had no intention of going outside to investigate. I quickly locked all the doors, turned off the lights, and retreated to the bedroom. There was no TV, so I pulled up a video on my laptop, trying to shake the unease. Eventually, the steady sound of the wind and snowfall began to lull me to sleep. I shut my laptop and was just about to settle in when, knock, knock. I jolted upright, my heart pounding. Knock, knock. "Hey, it's me again. I'm still lost. It's freezing out here. Can you please help me?" It was him. Why was he still here? I barely breathed, straining to listen. The knocking continued, steady and insistent. Then, after maybe 30 seconds, it stopped. Silence. I stood frozen, waiting, listening. The wind howled outside, but I heard nothing else. He hadn't knocked again, hadn't spoken. Was he still out there? I had to know. Moving as quietly as I could, I crept out of the bedroom into the darkened living room. All the curtains were still shut. He couldn't see me, but I needed a view of the porch. The only option was the window that faced the front, of the cabin and the road beyond. Slowly, I pushed the curtain aside and peeked out. My breath caught in my throat. Footprints led up to the porch, but none led away. He was still there. Panic surged through me. I grabbed my phone and called 911. The dispatcher assured me help was on the way, but it would take at least 45 minutes for them to reach me. I locked myself in the bedroom and waited. 10 minutes passed in complete silence. The eerie stillness was unnerving, knowing he was likely just standing outside the door, not making a sound. The only noise was the heavy wind rattling the windows, then a sudden thud against the cabin. I had no idea what it was, but it came from the front of the cabin and was loud. My heart pounded as I waited, but again, silence. The fear was overwhelming. Time stretched, every second feeling like an eternity. Finally, flashing red and blue lights cut through the darkness outside. Relief washed over me as I got up and started toward the front door, but before I could reach it, I heard the officer yelling, "Get down!" I froze. The officer kept shouting, clearly responding to something outside. Then that same heavy thud sounded. Against the cabin again, followed by more shouting. As it turned out, the man had never left. He had climbed onto the roof of the cabin and had been waiting there, maybe for me to let my guard down, maybe looking for a way in during the night. I didn't know. The officer forced him down and arrested him for trespassing. Beyond that, the man wouldn't admit to anything. But it was clear he had been lurking around my cabin all day, watching. Whatever he was planning, it was nothing good. I work at a 24/7 ice cream shop. It's a small place, just a single room that can fit maybe 10 customers at a time. Despite its size, it's a popular hangout spot in our small town. Teenagers often gathered there, especially since the parking lot was large and surrounded by abandoned shops. It was like a strip mall, except only the ice cream shop was still open. By 10 p.m., most of the crowd was usually gone, leaving only the occasional late-night group. I worked part-time overnight shifts, typically from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. On this particular night, my shift started like any other. I cleaned up the mess left by the previous workers, which took about 30 minutes. After that, I sat back and waited. Other than a group of teens stopping by around 1 a.m., the place was dead. Halfway through my shift, boredom set in, so I decided to do some extra cleaning. I gathered up a bunch of trash and took it outside to the dumpster. The dumpster was located near the front of the shop on the side of the large parking lot, close to the abandoned buildings. The night was quiet, not a single car on the road. As I walked back, something caught my eye. A light flickered inside one of the abandoned shops. At first, I thought it was a reflection from a passing car, but the road was empty. Confused, I slowed my steps, keeping my eyes fixed on the building. Then it happened again. A faint light moved across the windows for just a few seconds, like someone shining a flashlight inside, deep in the back of the store. Then, nothing. I stood there, watching, waiting. The light never returned, and I had no way to confirm what I had seen. But the unsettling part? That abandoned store was attached to the ice cream shop. Whoever was inside was just on the other side of the wall. I tried to reassure myself, probably just some kid sneaking in to explore. But deep down, I wasn't so sure. Harmless. There really wasn't much else to do aside from wait around for the rest of my shift. It was about 2 a.m. now. I leaned against the counter and stared out the front windows, spacing out, when I heard something beside me. I turned to the wall, and the sound came again, quiet but distinct, only noticeable because of the complete silence of the night. I quickly connected the dots between the sound and the light I had seen in that abandoned building. Earlier, I was now almost certain someone had broken into it. I considered calling the cops, but my train of thought was interrupted when a customer walked in. It was always strange when a single customer came in at this hour, alone with no friends. But this guy was even more unsettling. He looked to be in his 40s, disheveled, with a long, untrimmed beard, greasy hair, and a tired, almost vacant expression. As he approached the counter, an overwhelming stench hit me. "Welcome in. What can I get for you?" I asked, trying to sound normal. He just looked at me, then at the display case, then back up at me. After a few seconds of silence, he smiled, backed up, and walked out the door. I whispered, "What the hell?" under my breath. Something about that encounter deeply unsettled me. Between that strange man and whatever was going on in the abandoned building, the night was becoming increasingly unnerving. I didn't know what to do other than wait for my shift to end and hope I was overthinking it. Needing a break, I decided to take my lunch. Usually I would just sit in the back, but I felt like getting some fresh air. I grabbed my lunch bag and walked out to my car. Sitting there eating, I looked out the window at the quiet, empty parking lot. Everything seemed still, and the mysterious light in the building hadn't returned. I was just beginning to relax when I saw movement. 2 men appeared from around the corner of the shop. One of them was the same strange guy from earlier. The other, whom I hadn't seen before, was holding something in his hand. I was far away, but I was fairly certain it was a flashlight. A lump formed in my throat as I watched the men enter the ice cream shop. They weren't acting like customers looking for a service. They were searching, like angry men hunting for something or someone. I dialed 911. Inside, the men jumped over the counter and checked the back room. 30 seconds later, they rushed out of the shop. They didn't steal anything. They had been looking for me. I watched as they ran around the back of the building and disappeared. When the cops arrived, the men were long gone. One of the abandoned stores had a door that had been busted open, proving they had been inside. It seemed like the first guy had come in earlier just to confirm I was alone, then went to get his buddy. By sheer luck, I had decided to take my break in my car. If I hadn't, I don't know what would have happened. I live in a pretty old apartment. It's cheap enough for me to afford living alone, which is the only reason I stay there. The place has its issues, though. On this particular night, I had gotten out of work 2 hours early. I got home, heated up some dinner, and sat on the couch to watch TV. I was exhausted and had no plans of staying up late. The dim lighting and soft glow of the screen made me even sleepier. I had only been home for about an hour before deciding to call it a night. I turned off the TV, went to my bedroom, and fell asleep within minutes. I didn't remember the weather being windy that night, which is why it was strange when I woke up to a creaking sound a few hours later. The building was old, and any light, wind could make it sway, causing echoing creaks and rumbles through the walls. But something felt different about this sound. It wasn't the usual groaning of the apartment shifting. As my thoughts raced, the creaking sound started again, and it didn't stop. It followed a rhythmic pattern. One creak, a second of silence, another creak, again and again, and it was coming from inside my apartment. I sat up, my heart pounding. I opened my bedroom door. My hallway stretched ahead, leading to the front door. On either side at the end were the kitchen and living room. I listened carefully. The sound was coming from the left side. It took me a moment to fully register what I was hearing. The creaking was moving across the floor. Then, before I could even react, a figure appeared at the end of the hallway. Every muscle in my body tensed, but the man didn't look at me. He just kept walking slowly across the hallway, staring straight ahead. Adrenaline shot through me. I quickly but silently stepped back into my bedroom. I didn't dare close the door. I was afraid of making a noise. The creaking continued through the kitchen. I heard cabinets opening and closing. Then, the slow, deliberate footsteps resumed. My heart pounded louder in my chest. How had he gotten one in? It had to be only a matter of time before he turned and walked down the hallway toward me. Just as that thought crossed my mind, I saw his shadow moving toward the end of the hallway. But again, he just walked past it. The creaking moved into the living room. Then I heard the soft squeak of the couch cushions. He had sat down. Everything about this made no sense, and it was about to get even worse. Horrified, I crept over to my bed and grabbed my phone, my hands trembling as I texted 911. Calling felt too risky. I couldn't chance him hearing me. The next few minutes stretched into an eternity, each second filled with unbearable tension. I knew he was just sitting there, mere feet away, on the other side of my apartment. At any moment, he could stand up and walk straight into my bedroom. But he never did. Then a message appeared on my phone. The officers were in the building and coming up to my door. Summoning every ounce of courage, I sprinted down the hallway and flung the door open. They stormed in, tackling the intruder before he had even fully risen from the couch. I didn't recognize him at all. Later, I learned that he had climbed up the side of the building and onto my second-story balcony, entering through the unlocked sliding door. He claimed he was simply attempting to rob an apartment, but he hadn't taken anything. He didn't even have a backpack or a bag to carry stolen items. More disturbingly, he had just sat there on my couch waiting. It made no sense. If robbery was his goal, why go through the trouble of breaking into a second-floor unit when easier targets were available on the ground level? A chilling thought crept into my mind. Was I the intended target? Had he been watching me? And if so, was he waiting because he thought I wouldn't be home yet? It was a terrifying possibility. The uncertainty of the situation still haunts me. Was this just an unlucky break-in or something far worse? I don't know, and I hope I never have to find out. This happened in early March last year. Though winter was fading, the mornings were still frosted over, and the air carried a lingering chill. With the weather improving, I was eager to return to my outdoor hobbies, hiking, camping, biking. That day I decided to revisit a secluded spot I had camped at the previous fall. It was a peaceful, unpopular place, ideal for solitude. After a 45-minute hike down a trail, I reached my campsite, a small dirt clearing with a breathtaking view of the forest below. I set up my gear just as the sun began to set. I liked arriving late, eating a quick meal and heading straight to sleep. As I gathered sticks for a fire, I wandered over to the overlook and paused. That's when I noticed it, a fire burning down in the trees. It wasn't too far away, maybe a few minutes' walk from my spot, but something about it was off. There was no tent, no chairs, no people. The fire was just there, completely unattended. It made no sense. Fires don't burn forever. Someone had to have lit it recently. So where were they? I decided to watch, assuming whoever started it would return soon. An hour passed. The sun had fully set, yet the fire remained untouched. Oddly, it seemed to grow, as if someone had stacked thick logs underneath the kindling to keep it burning longer. A wave of unease washed over me. This wasn't normal. I grabbed my flashlight and made my way down to investigate. As I neared the fire, the silence became deafening. The only sound was the crackling flames flickering in the wind. Whoever had set it had done so recklessly. It was already burning too high, dangerously close to getting out of control. And yet, beneath it, more unlit logs had been deliberately placed, waiting to catch fire. Someone had done this on purpose. I started throwing handfuls of damp soil over the flames, managing to suppress them enough to remove the larger logs. It took about 5 minutes, but eventually I had it under control. Then came the realization. I was now alone in the middle of the woods, in the dark, with whoever had set that fire still unaccounted for. I turned on my flashlight and began my return to camp. Every rustling leaf, every snapped twig sent a jolt through my nerves. Something about this felt too deliberate. Back at my site, I hastily packed my things, my gut telling me to get out. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming toward my campsite. My grip tightened around my flashlight as I turned toward the sound. A shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, standing about 50 yards away. I couldn't make out their face, but I knew they were watching me. "Hey, did you light that fire?" I called out. Silence. I took a step forward. "Hello? I see you out there. Just answer my question." Nothing. The air felt thick, suffocating. My instincts screamed at me to leave. I hurriedly stuffed the last of my belongings into my bag and slung it over my shoulders. The figure remained motionless, watching. I started walking. Even as I moved, they didn't follow. They just stood there, watching. I didn't stop until I reached my car. Once inside, I locked the doors, hands shaking as I dialed the police. I told them about the fire, about the person standing in the woods. They said they'd send someone to check it out, but I never found out what happened. To this day, I don't know who that person was, what they wanted, or why they set that fire. The not knowing is what unsettles me the most. Were they trying to start a forest fire? Or had they noticed me arrive and built it just to lure me down there? I didn't stick around to find out, and I'm glad I didn't.